We're back on the SportsMax zone now. Before 2022, Jamaica had been starved of regional cricket titles. Jamaican setup hadn't won the Caribbean Premier League since 2016 and the regional Super50 or 4-day title since 2012. But under the leadership of Captain Rovman Powell and coach Shipnarayan Chandapo, the Tallawahs lifted their third CPL crown back in September. And at the weekend, with Powell again as captain and Andrew Richardson as coach, they secured their 9th hold on the Super50 tournament. So what does this latest triumph say about the game in Jamaica? To discuss that, we have at the moment in the studio Chadwick Walton, whose match-winning 80 was the pivot that the Jamaicans used to defeat the TNT Red Force in the Super50 final. Chadwick, welcome to the SportsMax Zone. Not for the first time. We've had you here before. Good to have you on again. And against the odds, the Jamaica coming up with the victory there, I would have thought, because you had lost 2 of your first 3 games, and you lost a pretty humiliating game against the West Indies Academy. But somehow the team bounced back and in the end won, I think, 4 or 5 consecutive games and showed a lot of authority in the final. What's your assessment of what happened, first of all, in the final, and just a quick recap of what went through your minds throughout the tournament when things looked a little dodgy?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me back on the program. That humiliating loss that you spoke about, it's a game of cricket, so it's a game of glorious uncertainties. And yes, obviously, those things will happen. I mean, there are a bunch of talented young guys, the West Indies Academy, and it just goes to show what they have to prove. Yeah. As it relates to the finals, we've won, 5 consecutive games, including the finals. So it goes to show that the depth and the direction where Jamaica really and truly wants their cricket to be going.
Mm. I saw where in the final, the sort of determination and application that you showed in your partnership with Andre McCarthy was significant, also because McCarthy had such a wretched tournament. He had played with very little success in the earlier innings, but I think his determination and the fire that he had to try to help the team to win the tournament came to the fore. Talk to us about that partnership and the sort of conversations you had throughout.
Well, that's what happens when you have senior players mixed with junior players. Everyone believed in McCarthy's ability. Don't mind, he wasn't really getting the scores that he would like during the tournament, but we know that McCarthy is McCarthy, and one day he will come good, and it's so pleasing to see that he came good on the finals.
Yeah. Chadwick, talk to us now about your individual performance with the bat on the final day when the team needed you, 80 of 94 balls, but just, an overall assessment about how you felt you did with the bat.
Well, personally, I think it was a splendid performance, given that we had a 10-year drought. So having won this trophy with such a performance, I'm happy with that.
Yeah. Based on, working with this bunch of Scorpions, talk to me about, what is so special? What sets this team apart from the other teams? The other 10 years you would have competed, of course, minus the COVID years. What makes this team so special that you were able to, bounce back from losses, overcome any hurdle, and walk away with the trophy this year?
What made this team so special for me, I think it was the camaraderie with the fellas had. We pretty much had that belief, given that we had such a long run of win coming into the finals. And obviously we were inspired by that century that Rovman played in the semi-final, which was brilliant, that took us into the final. So we know that pretty much the atmosphere was that once you're in the finals, big players, you turn up on that day. And that's exactly what happened for us.
Yeah, and speaking of Rovman, he would have his own individual performances as well as been a leader for the Jamaican Scorpions setup. Maybe a comment about that and how it has been for you working with him.
I mean, I've been working with Rovman since in different capacities. I've worked with Rovman since CCC. I've worked with Rovman at university. I mean, I've worked with Rovman at Jamaica Tallawahs. We've played against each other, so Rovman is not a stranger to me. So I think he's heading in the right direction in terms of his cricket and his leadership. And it's good to see that youngsters, he's no longer a youngster, but to me he is, but it's good to see Rovman stepping up.
Yeah, Chadwick, on this show we are often pressured to pick a team to win tournaments, and I did admit on Friday's show that usually in white ball cricket I would tend to pick a Trinidad franchise team over a Jamaica team in white ball cricket because I would have backed the TKR and the Red Force in previous tournaments. But there was something about this Jamaica team that made me feel as if they would have won. I looked at the semi-final and the sort of intensity that the team showed, not only with the Rodman Powell 100 that you just spoke of, but I remember Alwyn Williams' 45 and how hard he worked. Of course, Brandon King was consistent throughout and he got 64 in the semi-final. But when Alwyn Williams batted, there was a certain purpose that I could see in his body language, and when he got out, he was so disappointed. And I said to myself at that point that this Jamaica team is playing the purposeful kind of cricket that wins titles. Can you talk to us about the mood in the team as you came through to the semi-final and then went into the final?
The mood in the team, we were in high spirits. You mentioned that innings that Alwyn played, it was fantastic as well.
Yes.
We had Brandon also at the top who pretty much was consistent for us throughout the tournament. The two guys that left, Nkrumah and Jermaine, they were also instrumental in that win against Barbados. I mean, we lost 2 when they were there, but that didn't dampen our spirit. The coaching staff and everybody was just behind us trying to gear us up, giving us the sense of belief that we could have won this tournament.
Yeah, we were talking just before we started that the coach Andrew Richardson is only 3 years older than you are, and you would have played some cricket with him. Our producer Ricardo Chambers was suggesting that you're a pretty old chap yourself, Chadwick. I say that to say this. In a post-game interview, Richardson congratulated the selection panel for sticking with some amount of experience in the team, because I know that with John Campbell out because of his suspension or his ban from cricket, there may have been a feeling of going with a young player, but they stuck with you or they went for you as a 37-year-old and players with experience. And it seems that Richardson was happy with the squad that he had.
Well, Lance, you spoke about old, but you're as old as you feel,
Yes.
And right now
I know that. You don't have to tell me that, Chadwick. I know that very well.
And I feel like I'm a 21 years old.
Yes.
Yeah, but
well, you played like one, but go ahead, yeah.
To be honest, that's what happens when you have youth mixed with experience, and it's good for the continuity of any sport. I mean, if you, as a great man once said, Hilary Beckles, if you have 11 young boys on a field, that's a gang. So it's good to have experience in the older guys and youngsters coming in. We don't know how long I'll be around.
Yes.
Might have another 2 seasons, might be. This might be my last, who knows. But I will assess as the years go by.
Okay, so you said Professor Hilary Beckles said all young boys on a team is a gang.
Yes.
So what does he call the team that has a mixture?
No, that's a team.
Oh, that's a team. I understand you. Go ahead.
Yeah, Chadwick, a quick comment now on the bowling effort. You had Odin Smith and Nicholas Gordon topping the charts for top wicket takers, 50, Nicholson Gordon, 15 wickets each. So just talk, I mean, we know it's important to get the runs with the bat, but you need your bowlers to be able to defend totals. So talk to me about that.
I mean, first of all, let me comment on, this has been probably the first time that 3 fast bowlers is tied on for the most wickets.
Yeah.
And it's commendable to see that 3 fast bowlers top the most wickets in the Caribbean. Shannon Gabriel, we must give credit for him for his effort and his energy at the crease. The bowling aspect, we have Dennis Bolai, who came in and did some critical bowling for us. Pete Salmon, Jamie Merchant, Andre McCarthy when he got the chance. We had Odin Smith, Nicholson Gordon, all the bowlers, they chipped in, and they had pretty much, we restricted most teams to under 200 throughout the tournament. It's only a few times we had over 200, and in the semi-finals we had 300 plus.
Yeah, and that was of course some brilliant performances. Many teams though, when they win, they get complacent or they either become overconfident, and that doesn't really work in the best of ways for them. What's the plan for the Jamaican Scorpions to ensure that you continue to dominate in this format?
Well, the plan is just to play cricket in the simplest form. We play the cricket the simplest way. We try to play the cricket in such a simple way that we can repeat the simple things consistently.
Yeah. Chadwick, talk to us about Rovman's leadership, because he's been pretty successful with this Jamaica team in the past couple of months. And because Nicholas Pooran has now stepped down as the West Indies white ball captain, there's a lot of talk about who would replace him. Now, I'm not going to ask you that direct question, but talk to us about Rovman's leadership style and how good of a captain you think he is.
I am pretty pleased with Rovman's leadership style. He's growing in stature as a leader. I can see where he has grown leaps and bounds. And he's now reaping the success of his work. I mean, behind the scenes, he's been thinking about what he needs to be doing as a leader.
Yeah. About his personal game, I remember him in a post-match interview, having played a match for the West Indies, and he had a reasonably good knock. And he spoke of conceding that he knows he has problems facing spin bowling. I think left-arm spinners, he was saying in particular at the time. And he spoke about his dedication and determination to go into the nets and work on his ability to play spin, because he conceded that it was a weakness that he had. Is that something that comes out in him for his individual game, with looking at him as a teammate, and does that in any way transfer itself to him being a leader of men?
Well, that is a good question, but I think Rovman would have been the best person to answer that question.
I know, but I ask you because he seems to be very focused, and at this time in West Indies cricket, there are a lot of fans who complain that they don't think that the players are committed enough and they aren't serious enough about their game. But I'm seeing something in Rovman that shows me that he really is putting a lot of time into elevating himself as a professional cricketer in his own game. So I ask you that because you train with him. You're a part of the training system. Do you see that in him, that he really is someone who is putting in a lot of work to elevate himself as a professional?
I mean, what you're seeing, Lance, I think that is what I know of Rovman, so it's not something new to me.
Yes.
Ever since I've known Rovman, he has been somebody who has been putting in the work. He has been someone who has always tried to be as professional as possible. Mm-hmm. So probably the reason why I can't answer that question is because that is Rovman.
It's a no-brainer.
I know.
Yes.
There's nothing different. He's always trying to push himself to the limit, mm-hmm. and just to push beyond that to see how far he can go. You spoke about him admitting the fact that he struggles to spin, which is very good. To correct something, you first have to identify that there is a problem. So that's a good step in the right direction.
Yeah. Richardson is pretty young as a coach as well, Chadwick, and he had a short stint with the Windwards Volcanoes, didn't he, a couple of seasons ago, back now in a Jamaican setup. What are your thoughts about him as a coach?
As Richardson as a coach, with any other coach, you first have to pretty much earn the respect of your players. And I think he did that pretty well in terms of earning not only the junior players' respect, but the senior players also. Mm-hmm. And then players now have to have that belief and trust in the coach. And I think everyone in the squad had that trust and belief in Richardson as a coach.
Mm-hmm. And one more thing, I know there were different players in the CPL to the Super50 setup. There were some players who straddled the two tournaments, but there were Jamaica franchises that had different rosters, but some players similar. Would you say that the CPL success that Jamaica had sort of propelled them from a confidence level to help them win the CPL?
I mean, some of it might have been
Super50, I'm sorry.
Coming from CPL into the Super50. I mean, we had Nicholson Gordon, we had Rovman, we had a few players who were actually in the CPL.
Yes. And
so, given that confidence coming into the Super50, that might have helped. But as it relates to franchise cricket, that is the nature of sports now. Mm-hmm. Today we're playing against somebody, and tomorrow they're on your team. So it goes to show that you have to be mindful of and pay attention even to your own teammates when you're playing.
Yeah. Chadwick, we want to thank you for stopping by here on the SportsMax Zone and congratulate you again for the major part that you played in the Jamaica Scorpions winning the CPL. Convey the congrats to the rest of the team for us and Coach Andrew Richardson, who should have been joining us, but we had some technical difficulties with linking up with him. And assistant coach as well, Nikita Miller.
Nikita Miller, right? How could we forget Nikita Miller?
Yeah, he has to be a part of the team that gets the congrats.
Yes, definitely. He has always been the one driving and saying, big players turn up on big events.
Yes, Nikita Miller.
Nikita Miller.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks,
you.
Chadwick Walton. Obviously a big player because he stood up and put his hand up on the big occasion. Thanks, Chadwick. And we'll have a lot more coming up on the SportsMax Zone. A lot of big football to talk about, including what happened in Qatar today and some schoolboy football in Jamaica and TNT. Back after this.